Let's go for it. So it's my turn to interview you this time.
Yeah, I'm looking
Um,
forward to it.
I'm going without notes here, so we'll see how it goes.
I'm sure you'll
But
handle it just fine.
I'm sure you'll let me know if I miss something that you want to talk about too.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
So let's start off with how you got to Scotland. What led you to that?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the church, and really it was not really a decision that I needed to make. More, it was kind of an expectation, it felt. So I kind of just lived my life according to that plan and did all the things necessary leading up to it. And for me, it was kind of interesting the way that everything worked out with regards to my mission call. Um, so I took 3 years of Spanish in junior high and high school, and my mom served a Spanish speaking mission in Peru. And so, because of the likelihood of being one of the many that did serve in such a mission, that was kind of what I was prepared for, was something more stateside, speaking Spanish or going Central or South America or maybe Spain or something. But really, Europe didn't cross my mind much at all. And if I was going to go English speaking, wanted to go somewhere cool. But Scotland just wasn't on my radar. I was thinking like Australia or New Zealand or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but so the story for when I received my mission call was kind of similar to yours, except you executed it perfectly. I did not. So I knew when it was coming. I'd submitted my paperwork and was waiting for the call to come in the mail 3 weeks later or whatever the time frame was. And um, I was really anxious to get that call. And so at the time, I was working a job where I could go really early in the morning, get my tasks done, and be done by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So I came home at about 10 o'clock and did my, round the house chores like mowing the lawn and getting house clean and stuff. But I was like a hawk just waiting for that mailman to pull up. And for some reason, I must have got distracted just long enough, but the mailman had come and gone, and I wasn't paying attention. I went out to the mailbox, opened the mailbox, saw the mail there, thumbed through everything, and nothing was there. And I was like, how did I miss that? I mean, it has to have come today. So honestly, I went from the mailbox really, really kind of, I don't know, depressed, I guess you could say. Like I was like, I gotta wait a whole nother week for this thing to show up.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me, my mom, I had told her in a candid conversation a few days before, she goes, what are you gonna do when you get your call? And I said, I don't know. If I get it, I'm just gonna open it and then I'll know and no one else will. Well, she took that to heart, and so she like followed the mail truck around our neighborhood until it got to our house, and then she took my mission call out of the mailbox before I got to the mailbox.
So your mom executed perfectly.
She did, yeah. And I didn't think she had it in her, but clearly she did. Um, so later on that evening, she she said, "Hey, I've got something for you," and I was like, "Okay," and I was just really in a really crappy mood, and she like goes somewhere and pulls out the envelope, and I was like, I was pissed.
you,
Sorry for the
you
British. For
dirty dog. Huh?
I was very very upset. I was angry, and so anyway, I ended up opening it, and similar to you, because I had never thought about Scotland. I'm serving in the Scotland Edinburgh Mission, and my my aunt was really excited because she had served in Scotland in the early to mid '80s, and so that was really exciting
That's
to
cool.
connect with her and talk with her about places she had served and people that she was trying to connect me with. But um, yeah, it was really surprise. I didn't really have any expectation of what life looked like in Scotland, other than just knowing that it was the land of tartan and kilts, and I had so many friends that were absolutely envious of me. They're like, "Dude, you could go to Scotland and wear kilts and run around like Mel Gibson in Braveheart." And I was like, "I guess." I hadn't really thought about that, but so yeah. So I got my mission call. That was the first week of October in 2003,
Four.
4. Yeah, you're right. 2004. And then I was scheduled to enter the MTC in Preston on January 5th. So it seemed like a short run up because it was really only, what, 3 months?
Yeah,
October, November, December.
all
And
the holidays in there.
and interestingly enough, like my timeline getting to the mission was pretty hectic, especially after Christmas, because that was the same year that the University of Utah's football team went to the Fiesta Bowl. And I was very fortunate because I had my best buddy. He was born a day earlier than me, but had got his call a week earlier than I did. So he went into the mission fields, or went to the MTC the last week of December, and my family had planned a trip to drive down to Phoenix and go to the Fiesta Bowl. So if I remember correctly, the game was on Saturday, January 1st, and then we drove home um, Sunday, January 2nd. I was ordained an elder Monday, January 3rd, and then Tuesday I was on an airplane to make it to the MTC by
Wow,
January 5th. So it was kind of a whirlwind, but
that
I
is
was
a
very
whirlwind.
grateful that the timeline happened the way it did, because I was able to go and experience that game. And as you well know, that's a big part of who I am,
Yeah,
and my life. So, but yeah, that's kind of the whole story about how I got my call, and
that's
the
cool.
rest is history.
I didn't know your mom served in Peru. So did my mom.
Oh,
That's
really?
interesting. Yep.
That is a small world.
So cool. So give us a rundown on the 2 years, right? Just tell us what areas you served in. We're
Hmm.
gonna go through this quick because we'll come back to it, but
Yeah,
just give us the brief.
yeah. So I started in Peterhead, served there for 2 transfers. From there, was transferred to Dunfermline, just across from Edinburgh in the Firth of Forth. Um, I was there for 6 months, so 4 transfers. And from there, I went to the Isle of Orkney for a short stint. It was only 4 weeks, and then they closed the area, and I was moved to the Glasgow Zone Leaders area for 2 weeks. Um, there was an AP from the area that went in, and I kind of supplanted that. Um, and then from there, I'm sorry, I think I missed one. I served in Johnston after, yeah, that was early in my mission. Man, I'm mixing this up. Okay, let's start again. Peterhead, and then Dunfermline. Then I was in Johnston for 6 weeks. Then I was in Orkney for 4 weeks. Then 2 weeks in Glasgow. Then I was transferred to the Montrose ward and lived in Arbroath. I was there for 6 months. Then I was transferred to Hamilton, south of Glasgow. Um, and then from Glasgow, or from Hamilton, I was transferred into the Aberdeen Zone Leader area, and that's where I finished my mission. So I had 3 areas that were 6 months in duration, and then a few short stops in between.
Yeah, so I'm real short, I guess. 2 weeks in Glasgow. So
Yeah, which was unfortunate. I had a great companion at the time, Elder Bear, and we had more fun um, serving together that 2 weeks than it felt like we were together for a full transfer, but man, it was very, very quick.
Cool. All right. So post mission, let's talk about, what have you been up to since then? I know it's been a lot. You could probably
Yeah.
start where you left off, right? With the University of Utah,
Yeah.
going back and being a leader.
Yeah, for sure. Well, interestingly enough, when I came home, my I had I came home the same day that I had left on the 5th of January, and enrollment had already happened for the spring semester. But my mom enrolled me in two classes at Salt Lake Community College, just to kind of get my feet wet, do some general education stuff. So I was actually at Slick for 2 years,
Okay.
and in the meantime, I had some buddies that were at the U, and they helped me secure a must pass to go to the football games and the basketball games and stuff like that. Um, but the story of how I transferred from Slick to the U was they finally figured out that there were people like myself who were not enrolled students that were members of the MUS. And so they said, we're going to start making you show your student ID in order to get in. So I actually, I don't know how I pulled this off because I don't remember having any sort of like documented letter saying I was accepted to the U, but I just went up and enrolled in a single class so that I had my student ID. And then I finished out, that was one of my required classes for my general education. So I transferred that course from Utah to Salt Lake Community College, got my general eds, and then transferred it all back to Utah, and then was a full time student there until I graduated in 2011. Um, and in 2009, I met my wife there at the U. We were actually on the board for the MUS together, so we shared some common interests, which was a lot of fun, and that's still one of our passions together as a couple. But so we met the spring of 2009, started dating officially in the summer of 2009, got engaged in November of 2009, and we were married in June of 2010. So in a few weeks here, we'll be celebrating our 12th anniversary, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Um, from there, my life has been a complete whirlwind.
What'd you study in undergrad?
My undergraduate degree was in I did parks, recreation, and tourism with an emphasis in sport and leisure management. And
That
the
just
reason
sounds like a lot of fun.
it really was, I mean, that was kind of the essence. I discovered um, during college that obviously there are people that work in the athletic department, and that's their job. So I thought, well, how would I pursue something like that? Talked to a couple of people that became mentors and said, hey, this is kind of the path you should take, and found it and ran with it. So obviously the sports management side was just part of who I was already. You know, I was all about the athletic side of things, but I just was learning the business side as opposed to the fun side, which was a little bit of a change of pace for me. I was a pretty fanatic individual when it came to going to games and participating in athletics as a student. But so in order to complete my undergraduate degree, I had to have an internship the summer of 2011, and there wasn't a lot that was offered in the Salt Lake area because I was really hoping to find something that paid something, so that I wasn't just, you know, the free help to the people that I was working for. Couldn't find anything that really suited what I needed for that summer, and so um, took a flyer and moved to LA. And in the process of moving to LA, I had actually applied for a couple of internships, um, and was notified before we moved that I had received both internships. So I
Oh,
worked that summer at the Rose Bowl, in um, their events department, and then also worked in the on the ticketing side with the LA Sparks and the WNBA. So that was pretty cool. I mean, kid from Utah, hadn't really seen a lot of big things, but was running around on the field, the Rose Bowl, some days, and then a couple of times we got to go shoot hoops on the Staples Center floor when
Wow.
Kobe was kind of a big deal at that point in time. But yeah, that was a really cool experience, and really got my feet wet of where I wanted to be in sports. All the people that I had networked with said, "You got to get into sales. You got to get into most prominently was ticket sales in order to move up in the ranks of athletics." So that's what I did. I in the meantime, I did the leisure side of parks, recreation, and tourism. I worked at a golf course for about 6 or 7 months. I worked a part-time job doing ticket sales with AEG, which is the company that owns the Staples Center and a lot of venues now all over the world. But I was working specifically selling tickets to the Pac-12 basketball tournament the last year that it was at the Staples Center,
Oh wow.
and from there, my goal when I got to LA is I wanted to work for UCLA. That was just one of the goals I kind of pinned on my "this is going to happen" board, and I networked with some people that eventually saw a great opportunity for me. They had just decided to start a new ticket sales program at UCLA, and so I had one of my connections that called me and said, "Hey, this job is for you. You need to apply for it." So I applied and thought I'm a long shot, but I found out later I was a shoe-in, because I was the only person at the interview. It was a big group interview that had actually done phone sales or done ticket sales before. So I worked at UCLA. Um, God, what was that? 2011, the spring of 2012. Um, and we loved living in LA. It was a hard time. Everything was kind of still in an economic recovery, and so it was expensive to live in LA. And I wasn't making much money working at a public university, and my wife had a decent job, which she thought was being paid a lot, but as far as the expenses in LA, it just wasn't enough. So we made a collective decision to move back to Utah. I had a job opportunity that was floated in front of me, but I wasn't quite sure it would work for me. But I needed management experience to continue to move up in the ticket sales ranks. And so I ended up working with the Utah Grizzlies, the minor league hockey team in Salt Lake, for a season, which was a lot of fun. Hockey was not my first choice of sports, but it's a fun sport to watch, especially when you're invested in the team. So I did that for 13 months. During that time period, I actually decided to go back to school and get my master's degree, and was fortunate that the only school that I applied to I got into, which was Gonzaga University. And they had a masters of sport and athletic administration, um, that for the first time they had offered as an online program, so for like working professionals. And I applied and got in. So it was a 2-year program. I didn't actually live in Spokane, but was just working and also doing school. And at the same time, shortly after I got into my master's program, found out my wife was pregnant with our daughter. So the my third semester of that graduate program was the most hectic. I was we actually moved 3 months, 2 or 3 months before my daughter was born. So we moved to Logan. I got a job working at Utah State in their athletic department doing ticket sales. So we moved. Then my daughter was born, and I think that was the semester that I had like sports law that they talked about, and
Oh man.
for whatever reason, they just had you read a bunch of lawsuits and stuff to figure out what sports law was, and it was one of the hardest semesters that I've ever dealt with, having a full time job where I'm working 60 hours a week, have a new baby at home, and trying to get get a master's degree. So, but I did it. accomplished that. Graduated in 2015 from Gonzaga, and then the next year, the job at Utah State was great and loved every minute of living in Logan. It just it fell apart. There was some contractual things that happened there, and so I was looking for the next opportunity. And I actually had a connection through LinkedIn that reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you ever consider living in Oregon?" And I was like, well, I'd been to Oregon once, and I thought it was fine, so I thought I'd check it out, and ended up getting a job working for the Pac-12 at Oregon State University and living in Corvallis. Um, and that was honestly a fun gig. Enjoyed every minute of it. But unfortunately, they had some changes in their administration about 6 months into my job, and the shuffle found me on the outside as opposed to still moving forward, which was unfortunate. But at that point in time, I just thought, I've got to figure out what I can do to stabilize my family and put us in a place where we can um, have some longevity because we'd moved so many times. Um, so the last move we made is hopefully the last one we'll ever make. So we moved to Colorado in 2018, and I started a job working at a home builder. Worked there for about 10 months and thought, I can sell houses. Why do I have to just sell this builder's houses? I want to sell them all. So I got my real estate license in the summer of 2019, and I've been a realtor since that time. And and then also helped my wife. She's established herself in the real estate industry, as well as working with a few other small businesses with a marketing company that she's established. It's called New Hue Visual Pros, and she's incredibly good at her job, and I'm really proud of her for those accomplishments. But so we live in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. We've lived here now for almost 4 years and love everything about Colorado. It's a great place to raise a family and has a lot of amazing perks to it, especially the sports. I love getting out to sporting events. Going to the Rockies game this week with my sister should be fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. So for those of you who don't know that business Zach briefly mentioned, you got to follow him on Instagram, follow his wife on their social media feeds, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that. And
Yeah.
if you see any drone footage, that's Pilot Zach, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's become one of my, I would say it's a hobby more than anything. I just get the opportunity to go and fly around the city and take pictures and videos, and it's pretty dang fun.
Yeah, you guys do awesome work. So, and I mentioned last time Zach was my realtor, helped me find the house up here. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a dream come true. When you reached out and said you're moving here, I was like, slam dunk, let's get it done.
yeah, slam dunk for both of us.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
market's still crazy here, but I got in.
Yeah.
I definitely got in at the right time.
Yes, you did. Absolutely.
So, very good.
So, and beyond that, church calling stuff, I've been in every ward. I serve in a different capacity. Most often it's been teaching Sunday school to one of the youth classes. I have been a young men's, I wouldn't say the president, but the leader of the young men's at in one group, um, and served in a couple elders quorum presidencies. And my most recent calling, I was the second counselor in the Sunday school presidency, which was honestly my favorite job that I've had
Yeah.
in the church. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. And your daughter's like in second grade now.
Yes.
Just
So
finishing.
a week from now, she will have finished second grade. So she'll be in third grade in the fall.
Very
So
cool.
pretty cool.
All right. Well, man. Yeah, we both moved around a ton, and hopefully are settled here in Colorado.
Yes,
So,
indeed.
any of you listening want to come visit Colorado? Got a couple
Yeah,
places you could stay. If you want
we
to
will.
move here, Zach can hook you up with that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. Very good. That's a good recap, man. So much happens like in those few years after the mission, that
Mhm.
it's crazy. So,
Yes, indeed. And there's
and
all that more that's coming too.
yeah, I'm really glad though that we were able to reconnect. I think I saw you a couple times when I was at BYU and you were at Utah. I saw you once at a basketball game where you got arrested, I think. I don't think I told you, but I was working for the BYU police department at that time. So,
Were you really?
yeah.
I don't
But
know
I
that
didn't
I've
I
ever
didn't I didn't call the fuzz on you, I promise.
I don't know that I remember. Did you see that happen from afar? Do I need to disclose my
No, no, no. You don't have to go into your records there.
Yeah,
Uh,
goodness.
no, I think like it was a BYU Utah game at BYU. I gave
Mhm.
you a hug like on the veranda, like
Yeah.
walking around the outside after the game, and I think you got arrested like probably 5 minutes after that. So, but I had nothing to do with it.
I'm gonna clear the record real quick. I wasn't arrested. I was threatened to be thrown in whatever BYU calls their like tank for the night if I didn't get off of the private property of BYU.
There you go.
So
Okay, okay.
rowdy Utah fans,
Yeah,
I was immediately assumed to be some drunken crazy person, and so they had to physically remove me from the
yeah.
Marriott Center.
You were a threat. That's what it was.
Clearly, it was the red shirt. Had to be that.
All right. So uh, back to the mission. Let's go back. So we started out. You started out with me, right, in
Hmm.
Peterhead. And
Yep.
we talked quite a bit about that last time. Um, but what memories do you have being new to Scotland? What was, you talked about not knowing what to expect going in, but
Yeah.
uh, what really caught you, I guess.
Well, I think just the pace initially was really hard to get on top of. I mean, I don't know. I was fine with the MTC and the routine and getting up and going to bed and stuff, but being out and about for hours and hours a day was really just it was hard on me initially. And as you mentioned, it didn't help the fact that it was January in Peterhead, or I guess it was
Yeah.
like late January, early February, and the wind was just cutting through the entire town. I remember our flat that we lived in. Anytime the wind blew, which was pretty much all day, we had a couple of windows that didn't seal all the way, and so our
Yeah.
flat whistled a lot. But yeah, I mean that was definitely my biggest thing going into it. I was a little sad because I had missed Burns night by like a week, and so I only got one Burns night celebration on my mission, which I wish I would have had more because
Yeah.
I
You were in
really
the
enjoyed.
you were in the MTC for it first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they definitely didn't share that piece of Scottish heritage with us in Preston, England, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I loved every minute of our time together. I had a lot of fun with the ward. We had some really great members that really just took great care of us and made sure that um, we kept going and continued to work for their behalf. Um, I mean, some of my funniest experiences I think happened when we were together. Um, like I don't remember the name of the member of the bishopric who asked us to move, but my gosh, we showed up for that move on Saturday morning, and
Brother Black, I believe.
Brother Black, he still owes us a meal. So when are we going to go back for our meal?
Soon. Soon.
Yeah, they moved, and we were told that the elders quorum, or at least other members of the quorum, were coming to help move. And so we loaded their truck at their home in our ward boundary, and then followed them to their home outside of the boundary and unloaded their entire house from what was, I don't know, it had to have been at least a 3 or 4,000 square foot house in
Yeah.
in in the country into one of the little neighborhood homes that couldn't have been more than a couple thousand square feet. And I was just like, where is all of this stuff going? So, and yeah, that was something else. I was definitely frustrated, and by the end of the day, I was just dead exhausted. So I was glad that you let me take a siesta, because if I wouldn't have, I would have gotten sick and just been toast for a couple weeks or something.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I was remembering too is that you introduced me to the mission songs. So what the other missionaries had put together that were renditions of other popular songs that they had made missionary appropriate, and we found an instrumental version of a P Diddy song that we made our own version to. I don't even know if I have a recording of that anywhere, but that was just me being the rowdy.
I've got a cassette of it.
Do you really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But we found that disc, like, we were out chapping and it was just in the dirt, like in somebody's garden.
Yeah, I remember that. We picked it up and I was like, okay. And then we just decided to write a song to it, which definitely never made like the top
No,
circulated songs in the Scotland Edinburgh Mission, but you know, it is what it is. It was fun and
it was
good
fun.
good companionship piece that we put together. So
I think that ward, almost more than any other, I think we integrated in pretty well, like not just as missionaries, but kind of as members of the ward. Like,
hmm
we were in constant contact with the bishopric, the elders quorum president, the Relief Society, and then participating in ward activities, helping out with getting other people to participate. It was
hmm
a lot of fun.
yeah, it really was. And I was a little bit sad to not stick around when our last transfer happened because we got whitewashed out. Well, I guess it didn't whitewash; they closed the area, right, for
Yeah, they
a few
closed it for a
months.
little bit.
Um, they did open it by the time I was the zone leader in Aberdeen, which was fun because I got to go back and visit and see a few people. I didn't get to see everybody that had been there, but
Yeah,
nevertheless, it was good. Um, so yeah, from there I transferred to Dunfermline, which was a little bit different because I had there was actually four missionaries in the ward, so my companionship and then another set of elders, and we had way too much fun in that area. I mean, first and foremost, I served with Dan Conway, and I'm going to call him out on this because being a newer missionary, I really didn't understand or know the protocol, but I didn't know what was happening in Dan's life. I know he was struggling a little bit with the FOMO of not being able to watch Liverpool in their run to the 2005 UEFA Champions League final. But in any case, there was one night in particular where I don't know if I had said something that I shouldn't have or whatever, but Dan said he was going to the bathroom or something, and he never came back. And I was like, where the heck did he go? And come to find out, he had slipped out the front door of our flat and took off, and I didn't know where he was. And so when Dan comes on the podcast, we'll call him out on that and ask him what was going on. But
yeah, we'll get the other side of the story.
yeah, he did come back though, and we finished out our transfer together, and we had a good time together. And um, ultimately, I knew at that point that I had to really relinquish the strict nature of being a missionary and make sure that he felt comfortable with life. So we did watch the second half of that Champions League final with Liverpool and AC Milan. And it was funny because we had a dinner appointment that night, and whoever we were, I don't even remember who it was that we went to this dinner appointment with, but they had the game on like in the background. And as we were getting ready to leave, the game had just started, and not like 3 minutes in, AC Milan had scored. And so I was like taking the mick out of Conway. I was like, "Oh man, they're toast. There's no way that they're gonna win."
Yeah,
And he was just depressed, like totally depressed. we were supposed to be knocking doors, and he was just in a different world. And I said, all right, let's go find a place we can watch the second half. And so we went over to a lady. Her name's Karen Vickers. She was a single mom in our ward in Dunfermline, and went and sat down. And we got there. It was halftime, and Liverpool was down 3-0 at half. And I was like,
Oh man.
how many times are people going to come back from such a deficit? But I told Conway, I said, all right, here's the deal. If Liverpool come back and win this game, I will support Liverpool. They will be my team. And then they scored like really quick into the second half. Then they scored again, and then they tied it with still I don't know, 15 minutes left in the match, and ended up going to extra time and then to penalty kicks. And I said, Elder, we got to go home. It was I don't know, 9:45 by the time that extra time was about halfway over. And he was like, okay, we'll go home. But in any case, he did his brother, I don't know how, his brother had our cell phone, and his brother called him and told him the results of the game. And so he was really happy. But yeah, I love serving with Dan, and he was a great missionary, had a great testimony. I just think he lacked the confidence necessary to go about doing things. And but nonetheless, love him to death, and still keep in touch with him. So I'm definitely going to send him this podcast so we can get him on here.
And that's your team?
Liverpool's my squad.
There you go.
They've won the double already with the League Cup and the FA Cup, and next Sunday is going to be a little bit of I'll have heart palpitations watching to see if Man City can drop some points. And because if Liverpool wins and Man City drop points, if they draw or lose, then Liverpool would be the Premier League champions. So,
oh, wow. So were you into soccer at all before the mission?
No. I actually, that's a funny story, because being thrown into Scotland, I was big into football, I was big into basketball, big into baseball. I actually despised soccer in every sense of the word, because I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand the rules. I didn't understand why guys are going here and here, and why you're kicking it from the corner at this point or throwing it in at this point. I just didn't understand it. And I went to a lot of my buddies' high school soccer games my senior year, because the team was really good. They ended up winning the state championship in Utah my senior year, but I just didn't understand it. And so I was just one of the rowdies that was there making noise the whole game, kind of like you see in some South American, Central American, where they just have a drum that's beating the whole time, and there's flares and stuff. But I didn't enjoy it. I didn't understand it until that instance with Elder Conway. And I realized at that moment, I said, okay, clearly I'm not going to watch too much basketball. I remember we did watch the NBA All-Star game, if you remember, you and I at a brother's house outside of Peterhead. I can't remember his name. He passed away pretty shortly after we were there too.
Yeah,
but
Squad president, right? Because he was into basketball, only one of three people in Scotland who really enjoyed.
Yeah, exactly. So, but for me, I figured, I was like, okay, well, if I love sports, and if I want to really have enthusiasm for the sports that are here in this country, then I just got to get into it. And that's why I decided to wager Conway on becoming a Liverpool supporter. And it's been a good choice so far. It was rough in the late 2000s, early 2010s when they were trying to figure things out, but it's been good the last few years. But yeah, I've gotten to the point now where my wife thinks I'm crazy, where I'll roll out of bed on a Saturday morning and watch a 5:30 in the morning game, Mountain Time. And I don't know, it's kind of what you do to watch the beautiful game.
Cool.
So
that's good.
And then after that, I served with Elder Littlefield for 3 transfers. That was the longest companionship I had, my last 4.5 months in Dunfermline. And he and I butted heads a few times, but we were kind of similar. He's a taller, bigger built guy like me, and so we kind of had that same, you know, dominant feel as we went around. Um, One of my favorite experiences though that we ever had was we went in and sat down with one of our investigators, and she had invited the Jehovah's Witnesses to our discussion, and because she had been studying with them too. So I don't know how she balanced the two things. I mean, she's reading and studying with us, and then also reading and studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses. But she invited them over when we were there, and um, still being new in the mission and trying to figure out how to really showcase how much we have in our beliefs beyond what they have and things like that. I still wasn't quite all there yet, but we came out of that meeting, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I just have like a leadership gene in my brain. So I felt like because I had been in the area the longest, I needed to kind of be the leader of the area. And we got in the car, sat there, and just kind of decompressed for a second. And then I said, Elder, what did we learn from that? And I don't remember the words he said, but the the spirit was unbelievable from him. It was like the most perfect testimony of what we learned from it, and also realize that you know these are people that are trying to come closer to Christ and come closer to Heavenly Father through the way that they feel is best for them. But beyond that, it wasn't like we were in there bashing or referencing scriptures or anything crazy. It was just honestly, we sat there for a solid hour, hour and a half being preached to, and we didn't say a whole lot, but I really appreciated his insight and his spiritual thought at that point, that he was like, we're here for one reason, and it's not to tell other people that they're wrong. We're here to tell them that this is what we believe, and this is what's brought us joy and happiness, and that's all we can do. So um, hopefully we can get other Littlefield on here, Brent Littlefield, to talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
our interesting 4.5 months together. He put up with a lot with me because I was still a very immature missionary at that point in time, and thought I knew everything that there is to know, having only been out on the mission for less than 6 months when we first met. But he put up with me and put me in my place a few times, and was very grateful for that time together.
yeah, that's a pretty powerful revelation. So coming from, like, I didn't come from Utah, but I came from a place that's just as concentrated on the church as Utah, and
Hmm.
going to a place that was the exact opposite ratio, even more so.
Yeah.
Um, but realizing that we don't have a monopoly on blessings or
No.
prayer
Mhm.
or even a belief in our Savior, right? I learned a lot from a lot of people in different religions. And then when I came home and lived in the Bible Belt of the United States in the South, that really helped me to be able to build friendships with people who weren't of our faith, but realizing that we shared common values uh,
Mhm.
and a belief in our Savior.
Yeah.
So, like, I felt like when I got home from my mission, the things that I thought my mission would be weren't necessarily fulfilled, but a lot of them are now because of where I've lived and the experiences that I carried forward from that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a pretty powerful thing. I think that a lot of us had to learn uh, in
Oh,
that live
with
action field out there. So,
yeah, without a doubt, because you kind of come in and you're taught from day one that this is the truth. This is how you're going to portray the truth and share the truth, and let the Spirit manifest and give a witness that the things that you're talking about are true. And then to sit in situations where other people are talking about what they believe to be true, what they have had confirmation is the truth, or what has brought them joy and satisfaction in following God and their savior, or however they want to portray it. Um, it's always very interesting to hear both sides. And from that point forward, I really appreciated each time I had those conversations. Now, let's be honest, I did have a few instances where I did pull out a few scriptures and say, "Hey, read this from your Bible and tell me what it says." And you know, never in my time trying to do that was I
Yeah.
successful in getting
Nobody's
someone.
converted that way, right?
No, absolutely not. But ultimately, it put me in a position where I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to listen as opposed to an opportunity to talk or preach or share or whatever. And I learned a lot from those experiences. It put me in a position where I was like, okay, the likelihood of me converting every person that I talk to is pretty much zero, but I'm still here for the purpose of sharing who I am or how I've come to understand and appreciate these things, and that's really all I could offer to that
Yeah.
situation. So,
That's also something that nobody can take away from you. Right.
right. Hmm.
I know we had a couple situations, run-ins in Peterhead, like with the street preachers and things, and they definitely knew the scriptures way better than we did.
Hmm.
But no one can argue with your belief, your testimony, your personal witness. So
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting you say that, because I just had a memory come to my mind that happened while I was in Dunfermline, and I'm pretty sure I was with Elder Littlefield at the time, but I think I was on an exchange with the zone leaders or um, with the district leaders at the time. But we walked up to this door, knocked on it, and the woman who answered the door said, "Oh yeah, hang on just a second, I'll get my husband." And I watched her kind of disappear into the hallway that was a pretty dark hallway, and all of a sudden this large man appeared coming through the doorway, and he just laid it on us, like telling us that we were following a false prophet, telling us that we were going to hell, that we were doomed from day one of believing in this religion. And I really didn't have an answer at that point in time to like combat the things that he was saying. And so for me, I kind of took a moment where I was like, do I really know if this is what I believe to be true? Like, I don't know why, but like he shook my testimony. And so, and this was a few weeks in advance of General Conference that year, in October. And so I set out in that time frame between then and General Conference to figure out if the Book of Mormon truly is the Word of God and that it was given to us for a purpose. And for the longest time, I was just felt like every prayer, every thought, everything just kept continued to feel like it was against me. And then General Conference came around, and for whatever reason, every flippin' talk and every hymn that was sung had something to do with Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. And I had this, I can like close my eyes and I'm sitting in the pew in the Dunfermline Chapel when I had this kind of aha moment that I know was the Spirit that said to me, "Zach, you dummy." And I was a little taken back at it initially, but the thought came to my mind that it was like, you didn't have to ask again that you knew it was true. You've always known it was true. It's just a matter of the situation you were in. And it was really quite an amazing experience for me, because I was seeking an answer for something that I already knew the answer to. I just had been knocked off my perch a little bit for a period of
yeah.
time. And I really liked the way that the Spirit talked to me, though, because honestly, that was the thought. It was, "You dummy." You know, he wasn't. The Spirit was not mincing words at that point in time, but it was a pretty powerful um, testimony for me to just say, go about doing what you're doing. You're doing what's good. You're doing what's right. Just keep going. Don't give up because one person tells you that they think you're going to hell. I mean, ultimately, they're not the decider in that. That's on me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was a really big experience for me early in my mission, where I had to really figure out, hey, are you going to keep doing this, or are you going to, you know,
Yeah.
set it aside and move on with life?
I think every missionary has that point where like you're not there anymore because it's just what you're supposed to do, or because your parents expected you to, or whatever myriad of reasons. You're either going to stay there because you believe in being a missionary, or you're going to go home. So
Right, exactly. And I think that was kind of where I was, and the timing of all that was just so poignant that it was at that point. I think I had been out for just over six months, maybe 7 months, and I was, obviously in my first year of missing out on what I know summer activities to be at home and all those different things that kept being shared with me on emails. I was like, "Can you please stop? Can you just leave me be?" And it was one of those moments where you're like, "Should I keep doing this, or should I just pack it in and check out?"
yeah,
And I was glad that that happened, because it really put me in a place where I was like, "Okay, go about doing what you're supposed to do," and I'm glad I did.
yeah. It's like President Hinckley's moment when his dad wrote him and said, "Forget yourself and go to work," and
Yep.
just knuckle down and get to it. So
Yeah.
cool.
Exactly.
So what
So
was next? Yeah,
from there, I went to Johnston, and I love that ward. It was a great place. Um, Really got to know a lot of the youth in the Glasgow stake, because you had kids coming in and out of different wards periodically, which was fun. But I served with Elder Ballack while I was there, and to say that was an easy situation would be a lie. I really love Ross to death, but I don't know. I don't know. I struggled with him a lot, just based upon, I think we had similar personality types, where he wanted to lead and I wanted to lead,
that's always the
and
hardest.
yeah, it was really hard. And so I kind of had to step backwards and take on a lesser role than I was used to, and that was difficult. And then obviously I had a couple instances like, I didn't know this, but he had in his own mind, I learned this later, that he wanted to lose some weight. So he refused to ride our bikes. This is my first area, mind you, that I didn't have a car. So, I've been in the mission for 9 months and spoiled to death having a car the entire time. And we're in this smaller area where, you could take a bus or a train to some of the more outlying areas. But there was one instance where he's like, "Hey, we're going to, instead of taking a bus or, doing something to go to the other side of this area, we're going to walk." And it was at the time of year where it was starting to get cold. It was kind of like October, November timeframe. And so I had my big puffy coat on. I'll never forget this. We were walking, and all of a sudden it just tipped rain. It was unreal how wet we were. And my coat was soaked. Like, I was basically carrying around like 2 buckets of water on my shoulders in that coat. And I don't remember if Elder Ballack had been in the area before, or if he whitewashed in, but we went and visited someone and they let us in. And I was completely mentally checked out of what we were doing, because I was so focused on trying to get dry. So, like, I kid you not, we're sitting in front of someone I'd never met them before, and I don't know that I ever saw them again. But I kid you not, I took off my shoes while we're sitting on their couch. I took off my socks, and I was sitting by a space heater, and I was like holding my socks to the space heater to dry. And I remember my shirt was like completely drukit, to use a Scottish word. I was soaked to the bone. And I just was like, I was miserable because he had decided he wanted to walk. And unfortunately, we got absolutely drenched in rain. But, you know, beyond that, we had some really cool experiences. We had some really good discussions, and he had a great testimony. And I really enjoyed my time with him. Um, it was an opportunity for me to grow. And I remember having my president's interview that transfer, just saying how hard it was. Like I just did not mesh with him for whatever reason. And he's like, the one thing that President Vriens said to me is, he goes, think about it this way. Think about the personalities of your children and imagine the fact that you're not going to get along with all of your kids. I was like, holy crap, that's a pretty on point thing to say,
Yeah.
that overall you may get along with a few of them. There might be one or two or that you just don't mesh with, or you don't have the same likes or dislikes or whatever. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me. And I'm grateful for that experience. I'm even more grateful it was only a 6-week period. But so anyway, and I love Johnston. I love the ward. I love the members there. There was a couple of single sisters that had young kids, or older single sisters that I guess they weren't single. They were married, but they were, the only members in their family. But yeah, I loved that area. It was a great, great area, great people. The Hale family was my favorite there. They're actually, the husband is American and his wife is Scottish. And he served his mission there, and that's when he'd met his wife and lived there forever. And they had some awesome young women in their house that ended up marrying some of the young lads from the Dundee stake, and just great people. So love being in their house. But and then from there I got shipped up to Orkney. That was a little bit of a shock. I celebrated my 20th birthday on the Isle of Orkney, and it was just me and Elder George Willis. He was a piece of cake, but he made me laugh endlessly, and he was in his last transfer before he was going home, and so I watched him do more push-ups than read pages of the Book of Mormon in that 4 weeks we were together.
You trunked him out.
Yeah, well, I got 4 of those 6 weeks. He was in a trio the last couple weeks in one of his earlier areas, but the funniest experience I had on Orkney was we had a recent convert sister that was kind of a pack rat type of a person, kind of a hoarder. Bless her heart. I mean, she clearly didn't have a whole lot of means, but she did the best that she could. And this is probably something that hasn't been shared, but some of the elders on Orkney prior to me getting there, we did service at a pig farm on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, something like that. It was the brother of one of the members of the branch up there. And the pigs had given birth and they were going to kill the runt. The missionaries decided to take the runt back to their flat and had a piglet in their flat for however many weeks. Eventually, they figured out that was a bad idea. And so they gifted this pig to this new convert sister. And she actually was, she loved cats to the point where the first time I sat in her living room, I didn't realize how many cats there were until she took out the box of cat treats and shook them and then put them in the middle of the floor. And I kid you not, I'm sitting on this couch and there had to have been 25 cats that came from all areas of the house to this place to eat. Now, the funny thing is, the piglet that had been donated to her was also part of this group. And if you know how pigs fight for food, they use their nose and they chuck things out of the way. So if I could have recorded this, it would have been the funniest video of all time. But I'm sitting there and I'm watching all these cats trying to get some piece of food while the pig is picking cats up with his nose and throwing them across the room. And it was the most entertaining thing ever.
That's incredible.
But yeah, that was one of my favorite experiences with Elder Willis. It was just, we did not go back to her house very often because she lived on a more distant part of the island. But yeah, we had great members there, great spiritual experiences. My first Sunday in the branch, I gave a talk, I blessed and passed the sacrament, I gave the closing prayer, and I taught the Sunday school lesson. So that tells you how important the missionaries were to that branch.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting experience. There was an investigator that happened to be one of those like long-term members of the local um, Protestant church. But the missionaries before me had shared with him a talk from one of the recent general conferences from Elder Uchtdorf, and he was just totally touched by the Spirit by this talk. Like it had overwhelmed him to the point where he's like, "How could you not listen to this and know that this is a man of God?" And but the hard thing was because he's in a small town in a small community, he ultimately could not make the jump to join the church because he would be put in a position where the people around him would pass a pretty large judgment on a decision to do that.
Yeah.
That was interesting to see. And I had that happen a couple times in my mission where there were people that knew what we were teaching was the true gospel of Jesus Christ, but just for whatever reason that just didn't fit their lifestyle at that moment in time. So I hope that those are the people that are given an opportunity in the life hereafter that they can say, "Hey, my circumstances were this. If they were different, I could have," and maybe given them a pass of some sort that they could accept the gospel or whatever. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. Elder Willis introduced me to country music during that 4 week period of time. We listened to a lot of country music, and every time I listen to those songs now, they take me right back to driving around that island in our tiny car. And Elder Willis was always like, "Oh, this is a very spiritual song. You'll love this one, Elder." So, but yeah, we were there for 4 weeks. I had flown in there, and then we took the ferry back because we had to bring our car. We closed the area. I had that happen a lot on my mission, and that ferry ride was one that I will never do again. It was just if you ever taken a red eye flight, and woken up in the morning and thought, man, that was a horrible flight. Imagine doing that on an 8 hour boat ride I mean, this is again December in the North Sea, and it was like this the entire time. Just unreal how high the waves were, and you could feel the whole boat like rocking. It was just unreal. Like I don't know how I survived that. It was unbelievable. So, but and then from there, went to Glasgow for 2 weeks. I served with Elder Bear in the zone leader area there for a little bit. I was really hopeful that by some miracle I would go from not being a district leader to a zone leader to stay with Elder Bear. Elder Poland had been put in as the new assistant a few weeks early, so that's why I had that opportunity. But met some great people in that ward for the few weeks I was there, and then shortly after that, I trained Elder Marsh. He was my greenie, and we whitewashed into the Montrose ward, which I love so many people from that ward and had some great experiences there.
And that was right. That was right at the end of my mission, and we happened to be, I believe, we were in the same zone at that time. So
yeah, because I think you were.
Activities.
Yeah, you were down in Kirkcaldy at that point, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
That's where that one photo came from when
the
we
generation.
played. No, not even that. I'm talking about the day at the park in Dundee.
Oh, the football photo.
Yeah, the football photo. That was a lot of fun. So, love serving with Elder Marsh. I don't know. At that point in my mission, I really got into like this leadership mindset where I was trying to be the example to everybody. So after I had Elder Marsh, um, I don't think Elder Marsh enjoyed serving with me as much as I thought he did, just because I was a little bit more regimented than I probably should have been. But it's just kind of who I am, and So in any case, when Elder Marsh got transferred out, I got Elder King, and I was told on the phone, and Brandon knows this. We had a companionship inventory that went the way that all companionship inventories should. But we, when we first got together, I had been told by President Vriens, "Hey, he's coming from kind of a rough start to his mission. He didn't have the greatest of examples as his companions, and I think he was in Motherwell with 4 missionaries, and they had themselves some fun." But so I was told to be very rigid with him, which I was for the first 3.5, 4 weeks until that companionship inventory when I was like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I kid you not, like that was the words that came out of my mouth. And ultimately, he just kind of was like, "Nothing's wrong with me. Everything's wrong with you." And so we just started pointing fingers to the point where we figured out that we were just really too focused on the logistics of everything and should have been focusing on just enjoying being companions. Since then, we've been like really close friends. And
That's how it works for boys, right? You get in a fight and then you're best friends
yeah,
after. So
exactly. And we learned very quickly that we both had very sarcastic personalities, and so we took the mick out of each other quite a few times to the point where we loved every minute of being with each other. I know at one point he asked me to cut his hair, and I totally butchered it. So um, if he can forgive me for that, he had Sister Vrains can attest to this. He had like really pokey stand up hair, so he couldn't really part his hair. It was so Sister Vrains called him the porcupine, and she used to go up to him at zone conferences and put her hair on her hands on her head on Elder King's head and be like, "Oh, the porcupine." And so at one point he was like, "Hey, just cut my hair short enough where you can't really tell that my hair is too pokey." And I don't know, I hadn't done a lot of um,
your barber skills weren't up to par.
skin fades at that point in my life, but I gave it a whirl, and then we went to church, and he's like, "Man, my hair looks so bad. You got to fix this." He was so bugged. But yeah, we had some great experiences in Montrose, and some challenging experiences. We had at one point we've been challenged by the assistants in one of our first zone conferences to really commit people to baptism up front and then kind of work them to that point. And we had 5 people that were committed to baptism, and then they all fell apart. And it was really devastating. A couple of them were really close too, but they just had some variables that the ward leadership were like, "Hey, you got to figure this out before they can get baptized." And I was like, I don't know. Kind of in my mind, I was like, letter of the law does say that, but the spirit of the law says I want these people to keep coming to church. And I wish I would have discerned that better when I was a missionary, because I could have been like, "Look, I understand what the rules are. I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but I want these people to come to church. I want them to continue to progress in the church. And all of that happens by them being here as opposed to telling them what they're doing wrong." And immediately they just said, "We're not coming anymore," which was unfortunate. But, live and you learn. This is interesting experience. So I love that area. It was great. And then got transferred from there up to, south first to Hamilton. I served with Elder Powell there for 6 weeks. And I'm trying to think. At one point, I was with Elder Hardy as well. I think there was another companion. Oh, he was in Motherwell at that point in time. And I don't know, Elder Hardy and I love that guy. He just made me happy. And that was my first area being as a district leader. So that was an experience trying to keep everybody in check. The worst part is Elder Loganberg was in our district, and he and I were in the same group in the MTC. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was diagnosed or not, but he definitely had irritable bowel syndrome to the point where he would purposefully drink dairy and then just light the room up to the point where you felt like you were in a rotten egg factory. So I'm calling him out for that. at one point he definitely left a flatulent in a trash can and then turned it over and left it in our flat, and I had to turn the trash can over and get basically sprayed by a skunk in the face. But yeah, we had a lot of fun in that area. I loved the bishopric was great there. So was the Wark family. Ryan Wark is one of my favorite people, and his little brother Aaron. They all served missions after, which was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite things about my entire mission was interacting with the youth that were active in the church and being a good example to them to say, hey, being a missionary isn't all about just, the routine. It's about also being yourself and making the most of how you share the gospel. So that was a lot of fun. I just loved interacting with them and spending time with them. Yeah, and then the last 6 months of the mission, I was in Aberdeen as the zone leader. I served with Elder Pattenden for the first 3 months. This is the younger Elder Pattenden. And then I finished my mission with 3 glorious months with Elder Brant Peacock. I love that man to death. But we had some amazing experiences too in that ward, and I finally figured out there's a little blurb in my patriarchal blessing that says that I would go to a place where the people need me, and they need my unique talents and skills to serve them. And at that point in my mission, I didn't physically perform many baptisms. I saw a few of the people that I taught get baptized, which was great, by family members or people closer to them than me. But I realized in that area that was something that I wish I would have been more of on my mission was myself. I was a little bit too rigid throughout the process of trying to be what I perceived to be a good, righteous missionary, that I just was a little bit too focused on those things as opposed to being myself. But in that last 6 months, I really just came into my own, loved the people, loved loved on them hard, because we had been whitewashed in. Unfortunately, we had some missionaries that made some bad choices and had been emergency transferred out of that area. But nevertheless, there was a lot of trust that needed to be built up in that time frame, and I know for a certainty by my third transfer that we had built that trust, and that by the time I had left, the trust had been restored in us as missionaries in that area.
Awesome.
Which was really a huge challenge, but nevertheless, it had to be done in order for the work to continue in that amazing stake. It's just an incredible place and has a lot of amazing members that are in that area. So,
Yeah.
But for me, because I had discovered at that point that it was also an opportunity to kind of loosen up and have fun. At the same time, we had really fun zone activities. I think I told you we took a day to Slane's Castle up in the Peterhead area and went to
Capture the flag.
played capture the flag, yeah, for almost an entire afternoon with 4 or 5 sets of missionaries, which was just unbelievable. One of my favorite stories of all time was, if you remember, there was a flat that the Aberdeen, like the second set of Aberdeen missionaries, lived in, where you'd come in the front door and the bedrooms were on the main entry, and then you went up the stairs and then up again to the bathroom, the kitchen, and the living room. And this is when I was with Elder Pattenden. The other 2 missionaries were Elder Harlow and his greenie. I'm trying to remember what his name is. He's now a dentist. But in any case, we went over to their flat one night, and this was like just before 9:00. We found out we had a spare key to their flat, and
Oh boy.
so we saw that they were home, that they were at the flat already. So we opened the flat door as quietly as we could, and Elder Patton had snuck through into their bedrooms in the dark, mind you. And then as I went through, I kind of rattled the door, and Elder Harlow comes down onto the platform and sees me, because I think we were in our street clothes, and I zoomed past like into the flat, and he's like screaming at the top of his lungs like a little girl, and I'm trying not to laugh or pee my pants at this point because it was just hilarious how he was reacting. The first person that he called though was our cell phone,
His own ears.
and Elder Patton had not put the phone on silent, and so we were given away, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like we had this a perfect prank. They're upstairs, like totally scared to death that there's two people that just broke into their flat, and your phone isn't on silent. I was so bugged, but it was so funny just to hear Elder Harlow. He completely lost his mind for a minute, but we had a good laugh about that one. That was too funny. And then the funniest thing ever happened to Elder Patton one night. Apparently, I was like dead to the world one night. I don't know what happened. Um, Elder Patton was a snorer, and so I put my earplugs in so that I didn't have to hear him snoring, so I get a good night's sleep. And so I had gone to sleep. The next day, Elder Patton was like, "Dude, why didn't you wake up last night?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, excuse me, that some people in our flat, like in our apartment building, in the flat building, had come up the stairs, thought that our door was their flat door, and they tried the key and they couldn't get in, so they're banging on the door, thinking that their roommates inside. I think it's a couple of drunk girls banging on the door, and he's trying to wake me up, and I didn't wake up. Like I was completely
Out.
dead. I think he said he shook me. Like I just could not. So anyway, we wake up, and he says, "I can't believe you didn't wake up last night." I was like, "What happened?" He tells me the story, and then he said that the girls had left for a minute and then came back, and they had gotten some sort of like plaster or Paris or something, and like tried to caulk our door shut. Like it was just the dumbest thing ever. But like I woke up and I opened the door and I saw everything that he's talking about, and I'm like, how did I sleep through that? Like I had no idea that that was happening.
That's
But
hilarious.
like he had this hellish night, and I slept through the whole thing. So, but
That's great.
yeah, so yeah, that's kind of my mission in a nutshell. And I know I'm a little long winded, but man, it was an incredible experience. Something that I reflect on a daily basis, and I'm forever grateful for both the people that I met while there, as well as the experiences that I had while I was there, because without them, I think I'm a different person altogether as far as how I carry myself, how I do business, how I interact with individuals or groups. It just put me in a different place where I don't know. Everything I can glean back to and say that it had everything to do with my time in Scotland.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to leave off on, because I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. You know, there's hardly a day that goes by. I think I can pretty honestly say there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about Scotland in some way. So
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's just become part of who we are, and it's an incredible place. And there's nothing better in the world than finding somebody from there and being able to understand every word
yeah.
that comes out of their mouth.
Where are you, Faye?
I had that experience. We were at Disney World a few years ago, and I'm sitting in line at the Avatar ride, and the people in front of me have the thickest Glaswegian accent that I had heard in a long time. And I was like, "What part of Glasgow are you from?" And they went, "How'd you know that?" I said, I lived in Scotland for 2 years." And I was sitting there with my wife, and my wife is having interactions with them and conversations. And at one point, they said something that was like totally Scottish jargon, and she heard their words, but then she did the turn and look at me like, what did they just say? And I had to translate the
There you go.
Scottish for her. So that was it was so glorious. Nothing better than being able to converse with someone in the native tongue of Scotland.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
So, but yeah, thank you so much, Jack, for taking time and allowing me to share my journey through Scotland. Shout outs and calling out. I want to make sure that all the companions that I've mentioned come on. We'd love to have you, to talk with you, to hear about your experience in Scotland. And beyond that, I'm thinking about my particular group from the MTC, Elder Streeter, Elder Fisher. This is the blonde Fisher, the one that looked like Eminem.
Elder Divine.
Elder Divine, Elder Cotton Betteridge, Elder Barber, Elder Pilkington. I think that was about it.
It's a pretty big group, though.
We did. We had a really good sized group, and but all great missionaries that did amazing things in our mission.
All right.
So I'll make sure to send this to him.
You heard it. Thanks, Zach.
All right, Jack. Thanks a lot. Have a good night. If you guys want to be on the S.E.M podcast and you're not part of that group that has been called out, send us an email to SEMpodcast@51spylaw. That's 51spylaw.com. And we'll get you on our upcoming podcast schedule. But in the meantime, we appreciate all those that are on deck, and we're looking forward to talking to a lot of you. So, thanks, Jack.
Next time.
All right, have a good night.